All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Construction Technology Podcast. I'm Luigi from Provision. I have Mike from Build Vision joining us, Andrew from Join, and we have our guest, Anna from Trade. Anna, how are you today?
I'm so well. How are you guys?
We're very good. Thanks so much for hopping on. Obviously, congratulations on the Series A.
Thank you.
You've been making your rounds, obviously, on LinkedIn, and we're really excited to chat with you. We had a lot of topics we wanted to cover. Our audience tends to skew towards people in construction, not in construction technology, but executives who want to understand what technology can do for them, how to leverage AI, how they can make the workplace better. It's obviously very apt for you to come talk about trade today. So it would be helpful for you to just describe what trade does, and your backstory is pretty prolific. Maybe you can give us the part that you don't tell many people. So
Ooh.
we know that you came from tech and your family's in construction, but maybe you can give the listener some insight onto like why this was a very important problem for you and what the novel approach is.
Yeah. It's a great question. I don't think anyone's ever framed it that way for me, so this will be fun to answer. Trade was born and inspired by my dad's back office and all of my construction uncles who I grew up around. I had the lucky seat of sitting close by to them all standing up and scaling their businesses. And it was always a bit tough to watch. I could see very clearly that they wanted to build and win more projects and scale their companies, but they kept getting slowed down by the back office admin. All of these back offices were using 5, 6, 7 different systems to run their business, which created a ton of really negative data silos, right? You had time tracking and field data over here, you had payroll data over here, you had accounting APAR over here, and that disconnectivity like in the field and to the back office creates like zero visibility, right? You have no idea how the job is progressing or how the company is moving across projects. And without a real-time job cost, you're crippled, right? Especially when things move at the speed of light in construction. So I think I saw really early on that construction businesses don't go under because of one catastrophic event in the field. They go under from daily leakage in the back office, right? That it may go undetected for years, that like slow erosion of margin. So that was the early inspiration for Trade. Trade is an all-in-one back office operating system for contractors. Andrew has a burning question. Let's hear
Yeah,
it.
well, it's just like, is that true? Not the erosion of margin, but the like contractors don't go under because of one bad event in the field. Like my background's in tech, right?
Yeah.
I guess actually I've spent most of my career in construction now. Maybe I shouldn't be saying
You're
that.
squarely in construction now,
Yeah,
Andrew.
I'm squarely in construction for good or for ill. Uh, isn't the risk profile of construction companies that like you don't die from starvation, you die from indigestion because you take on project risk and something goes south and you're effed. Like that's where death comes from. Like margin erosion and lower profitability seems like back office erosion.
Yeah, I mean, those catastrophic errors in the field, of course, happen, right? But that's like, this is the data, right? That's way less frequent than, people kind of miscalculating the daily burden that happens in the field, right? And not keeping a close enough eye on project costs, right? Utilization, production units, right? And to the point where they're so over budget that they can't recover. Right.
Mm.
And then they're put in a position financially where they're doing work that potentially a GC is not going to pay for. Right. And so that's where you see that struggle. Right. And that a lot of times comes from just lack of visibility early on during that project management.
It's a false dichotomy, right? Like it's not one or the other. Both are true.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
sure people are struggling with payroll and it could be leakage. But I mean, I see specific contractors do go under because of a misprovision or because of a catastrophic site
Sure.
incident. So like it could be both, obviously. If you're not
Of
trading off one
course.
against
Yeah.
the other, they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
When you think about trade and the impact that an owner gets from implementing trade, what are the aha moments very
Yeah.
specifically? Is that one time up front? Does it get better with age? Like, give us a sense of why this really matters to.
Yeah, I think right off the bat, we're going to collapse 6 or 7 systems into one, right? So they're going to see a significant change management in the platforms they're using to monitor their business. And oftentimes that will impact the people in the back office that are using those tools, right? So immediately it's a change in software and likely a change in makeup of the back office team, right? As people who are previously just like doing data entry and moving papers around are all of a sudden reallocated towards revenue generating activities.
So they're going to go to revenue generation like BD or estimating?
Yeah, they could. Absolutely.
And people who were doing back office before, so like if they're doing BD or estimating, are they estimators? And people in BD, are they able to retool themselves that quickly and go generate revenue for companies?
Listen, every back office has their own flow, right? We work with companies that have one person in the back office, and we have companies that have 20 to 40 people in the back office. So it really just depends. I can't make a blanket statement on how people can be retooled. I think that's the approach to trade. It's highly specific, right? We're not just coming in and dropping a piece of software. We're retrofitting it for the business. We're probably one of the most configurable software tools on the market, right? Implementation period, we're taking trade from a generic tool and building it to really fit that specific business's processes.
Just a clarifying question. It sounds like the customer base is mostly specialty contractors, trade contractors.
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Have you thought through or explored like fully automating it for customers and like having them not have to hire back office people because of this?
I mean, that's 100% the goal, right? We've seen since companies have implemented trade, they've grown in the field by 265% on average, while their back office remains flat, right? So, or decreases in size. So that is the automation that we are trying to see and achieve.
So I get pitched a lot of payroll solutions, and sorry, I don't mean to put trade just in a payroll box, but like that's the thing that comes in and I get pitched.
Yeah.
It's sort of like payroll and then other stuff around it, and it's by a wide range of horizontal payroll and benefits providers that have integrations into all sorts of things and integrate retirement accounts and do payday lending, and just there's this really broad set of scaled horizontal players and newer horizontal market entrants that are pushing innovation. I was just wondering if you could speak to like why does construction need a verticalized solution? Like why is a verticalized thing right for the industry when there exist horizontal solutions without any adjectives applied?
Sure. Yeah, it comes down to a very simple insight, right? So in construction, your rates will change depending on where you're working, what you're working on, and what kind of project it is, right? So I'm Anna, like I could be acting as a carpenter in the morning and then a laborer in the afternoon, and that could be on the same project or different projects, and those projects may have different rates. So there's a fair degree of field to finance connectivity that is required for construction payroll to be successfully run. When you think about ADP and Gusto and Paycor and Paycom and all of these major incumbents, I'm Anna and I make $30 an hour always, right? It's a 40-hour week. There are no shift premiums, there are no overtime ruling, nothing like that. And in construction, it's like, feel free to challenge me on that, but I mean, there's really...
Right, like... People
sure, but like that's of course, but that's like a very basic construct, right? Whereas like in construction, different job sites are going to carry different rates. Different projects are going to have different like kind of premiums and stipulations. And so that kind of like dynamic data model is just lacking in those larger companies, right? They don't really care what happens in the field, right? They don't need that input to generate correct rates.
It's almost like, and this won't be the like right analogy, like Uber running payment. I don't even know if they would call it payroll, but payments for drivers, like incredibly granularly tied to the work that happened, right? It depends on the actual rides that you took and the earnings you made there. Tech office workers are somewhere over here where it's like you make whatever it is, and once a year you get a cost of living raise, and maybe you get a promotion every once in a while. And that you're saying construction, because of how varied projects are and then how varied like the roles that individuals can take on is like way closer over here, just in like the dynamism of like what people need to get paid.
Yeah, well, you're describing like salaried workforces, and construction is majority hourly, right? And so what you're describing in the latter part there is an hourly workforce, right? That gets paid for the work that is performed. And that is highly variable in this space.
Does that also mean, Anna, like is the implication of that, that value for your subcontractor customers tends to scale when they're multi-jurisdictional and over various areas where there are different union or trade rules?
Exactly. We focus in on multi-trade, multi-state contractors, right? Where like the payroll and tax complexity across multiple zones is a lot for them to manage as a small kind of back office operation.
And I'm assuming that's true because that makes a lot of sense logically. Does that mean then you have these large consolidated subs as the kind of like the model customer? So are you seeing adoption mostly there where you have, like super subs as we call them on previous podcasts? Or is it more mid-market? Like how do you think about where the most value is? Obviously there's always going to be value with your customers that they're getting value, but how do you see it scaling? Just to help me with my mental model of the value prop.
It depends on your definition of mid-market, but that's probably where I would lean us closer to that than a super sub. And so for us, trade is a multi-user tool, right? People in the field are using it, different personas in the back office are using it. And so where you're going to see the most bang for your buck is workforces that have around 200 to 500 people, right? Spread throughout field and back office, right? Because that's where the efficiencies of scale really kind of come into play. Doesn't mean we can't support that man in a van persona. We do, right? Because they can kind of have a business in a box with trade and prevent themselves from like taking on more overhead in the back office than they need, right? So there's value there, but to get the full platform benefit, it's probably mid-market.
Got it. Okay. I'll pass it off to Mike and I have some questions.
Sorry, and I'm gonna have a bunch more just like super basic questions, but I'm learning a lot, so I appreciate it. So there's all these different stakeholders, all these different personas, including in the field. They're tracking what they're doing. Like project management software has got to be the most like overbuilt category. Arguably, Join exists in project management, so I say that with a little bit of like self-awareness. You're tracking the work that happens in order to drive paying the worker. Is that duplicative with like a project management system that would be driving it to drive payments to the business and, I don't know, like litigation protection or documentation? Like you end up tracking the work twice, or how does that, like that piece in the field around like, hey, what got done? Like who did what? Is that duplicative or is it untracked inside your customer base? As I'm reviewing, I know way less about the like on-site trade tech landscape than.
Yeah, from what we've seen, we're not really replacing project management software. We're replacing paper time cards. That's like the persona that we're working with, right? They're not using a Procore. They can't afford it, frankly. We're talking about the specialty contractors. And so like where we really like try to avoid duplicate entry wherever possible, and you'll see that with our integrations with accounting systems. We would never want someone to do work somewhere else and then have to recreate it and redo it in trade. That's completely counterintuitive to our like fewer, better, faster system model that we're trying to generate. Right? So within our demographic, we're taking a lot of people from pen and paper into a digital time card in the field for the first time ever.
Okay, so it's like paper, it's not necessarily a replacement for, I mean, presumably there's some sort of project management.
Or like Exact Time or Clock Shark, but it's like, that's what we're dealing with. It's nothing more robust than that.
Okay, cool.
Love it. So kind of stepping out of trade, would love to hear a little bit more about, your kind of thought process. Obviously, you just raised a Series A. We now have 2 people on this pod that have gone through the YC position. I've been pretty adamant about not raising from industry VCs or whatever it's called. I can't even think of the right word now. Just would love to get your thoughts on
Strategic.
What was it? Strategic. There we go. Would love to get your opinion and thoughts on the value prop from strategics. And then also the value prop from YC and how you've seen that kind of grow. Besides you two on this call from YC, I think like the last kind of big names were PlanGrid, which was 10 years ago, and Equipment Share, which was 15 years ago. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that and how that has been helpful, hurtful, just kind of that journey.
You're looking at the next two companies, right, that are coming over. So listen, I'm always going to be grateful for Y Combinator, right? They were my first check into the business after a really brutal fundraise early on when no one could see that I was the right founder to bring trade to market, and that trade deserved to come to market, right, as a standalone idea. And so, YC betting on me early changed the entire trajectory of this company, and I'll be grateful for that always. I think construction has a completely different clip in terms of how you build, how you scale, how you distribute. And it is very, very counter to the YC practice, right? I think the number one thing YC preaches is launch fast, launch as quickly as you possibly can, get something in market. And I think that there was a big tension for us early on with that mentality, knowing that we were a payroll company, right? Delivering people's paychecks in a paycheck to paycheck demographic. And there's zero margin for error in construction. You only get one chance with these guys, these contractors, right? And so for us, that concept of launching fast was very hard for us to grapple with early on. But we found our rhythm and we found our way in. And, I think we got way more out of it than we could have ever imagined.
On YC, obviously they made a bet on you as a founder. I'm sure when you were originally raising, at least from what I understood from your LinkedIn post, people were passing on you because of your background. You were in tech, but you didn't have the construction experience, at least not the direct construction experience. Your family's in construction, so you already see it secondhand. But what did they get wrong about the business that you've now proved right at the Series A? But try and put aside the critiques on you as a founder, because it's less interesting than this is what's wrong with the business. ADP will eat you, or Procore will do this. What specifically did they get wrong about it?
Come back to that founder piece, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's good.
I think in the beginning, the one of the biggest questions always is something that you've already asked me, why does this need to exist for construction? When VCs historically don't understand this industry at all, right? And so they can't wrap their head around that. So it took a lot of explaining, and I don't know if I did such a good job early on explaining why construction deserved its own solution. The other piece was people thinking that I was lending. Right, lending that payroll, which in the 2022, 2023 market people were allergic to that. And again, I was probably explaining it wrong, right? I probably didn't have the right lingo, but hearing the word construction and payroll, people jumped to lending. And there were some people that were it was immediate no, right? It was jumped off the pitch within a couple of minutes, right? And I think that was something that I saw very quickly and realized that if we wanted to be a venture-backed business, any type of loans and lending would turn off many.
Do you think that's changing now, though? I know there's a couple of early pay companies. There's obviously Texture in the room that's kind of arbitraging payroll in their own sense with apps, ARAP. Do you think we're just going to try that again? Yeah, Contra4. I heard of a company that is now creating a marketplace to sell accounts payable. So a sub can come in and like buy it for 95 cents on the dollar. Do you think that's like that model is changing again, or we're going to go swing at that again, or do you think that's like kind of a buried skeleton? Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, isn't this like a tale as old as time, where you capture the workflow and you layer payments and then you layer other things on top of payments, like lending and factoring and so forth?
But correct me if I'm wrong, but like your whole position was like, yeah, you weren't going to go in and like factor initially. You're like, hey, like we're creating payroll, we're helping back office, we're doing time cards. Where like their other approaches have been like, hey, subcontractors have terrible cash flow. We'll give you 10% as opposed to 11% market and hope that we can underwrite better because of X, Y, and Z. How are you thinking about that? Obviously, as you're growing and trying to get into this, like, you know, the $1 billion revenue targets that you want to shoot for.
Listen, it's funny. I see people like in New York in the real estate space do lending like no one's business, right? It is a solid business model. The returns are there. I'm frankly not interested in that. I think the business I want to build, at least right now, doesn't involve lending, right? Like this is not trade has been positioned as a non-predatory tool, and I want to stand by that, right? And I believe lending at its core is predatory.
Unpack that more. Tell why do you think where the market is right now that the majority of lending, specifically for trade contractors, is predatory?
Yeah, well, it's one of the earlier things in my research, like in 2021, kind of led me to was, you would follow the life cycle of the worker, right? So like they're on the job site, and on Friday they get their paper check that's delivered to the job site, paper check still, and then they go right to Western Union, right? And they get 20% immediately taken off the top to get that turned into cash.
Jesus.
And then if they need to send money to friends and family, right, domestically or abroad, the transaction fees on that amount is like 30 to 40%, right? And so their money is just shaved down, shaved down, shaved down. And I think that early insight, right, and watching how payments were moving even between from the worker wallet, right, from their check to their wallet, it sparked a lot of thought for me on how can we fix this broken system, right? How can we ingest better tech in the back office that enables smarter payments to the workers that isn't predatory, right? And so I think the whole concept of we're here to do good is something that we have maintained throughout building this business. And loans, yeah, they're great in the short term, but if you aren't on top of them and aren't diligent and in the payback, you're screwed, right? And so I don't know, it's something where I wouldn't ever want to put our the business in a position where we're causing hemorrhage, right? It's not the kind of business I want to build.
So what's the first and second order effects of that? So hey, instead of going to get a paper check and going to Western Union to get 80 cents on the dollar, can a sub or a trade partner now position themselves as better to hiring that labor force?
Sure.
Or how does that upstream help a general contractor or an owner on a construction project?
Well, they now are enabling smarter financial tools, right? Think it's almost having a Venmo in your wallet, but powered by your employer, right? They've enabled a previously unbanked demographic to have access to fintech. Every worker on trade has the trade app. They see their wallet, they see their earnings, they see what they're going to earn throughout the week. So whether they're on prevailing wage work or not, right? And their rates are changing every single week, they can plan what they are gonna one worker emailed us and said, thank you, I was able to buy a birthday cake for my daughter this week, right? It's that's tangible. You can feel that impact. And that's the kind of work I want to do.
Is that, sorry, I'm again, totally, I'm underprepared. You guys have a wallet system, so payments flow into a worker's account on trade, and then I can bill against that. I can get a debit card against that sort of thing.
The card part, no, but everything else, yes. They can see their earnings as the week goes by, right? As they're.
Okay, and they no longer get the paper check on Fridays.
Correct.
Okay, and how many hourly construction workers that are getting paper checks absent trade are there, in the US, say?
Absent paper? What do you mean
million?
Absent paper? Yeah, there's 7. I think it's 7 million? No, it's probably too high. I can get the exact number. I don't know off the top of my head, but a lot.
Okay, I mean, it seems like if you're actually able to transition order of magnitude 1 million people from unbanked to banked, that's a. I mean, I don't know that I love my bank, unless they're listening, but it's way more efficient than Western Union.
For sure. I mean, there's also the hours spent where the back office teams were previously printing out checks in the back office, and then they had someone driving to different job sites on a Friday afternoon to drop off the checks. Just that's time there, right? Of the drive time, the gas, the human capital needed to just deliver paper checks. That's a thing of the past now.
And I have a question regarding roadmap, to the extent you're willing to share. If you are able to track hours, are you able to track productivity? And with productivity, have you given thought to having an incentive-based payment structure for early completion of various milestones? This has been, I know it's been done. I mean, Trunk Tools started in this space pivoted away. But would love your thoughts there.
Protiv, Share Willow. Yeah, there's several startups that have gone down this route. To be honest, like we don't have an incentive-based structure right now. It would be a very easy thing to layer on top. We are tracking productivity, right? Because as people assign themselves tasks throughout the day, what was completed, uploading photos, we see that visualization of what happened on site. I think I've just kind of been watching, like the Trunk Tools pivoted away from it, right? Protiv, they've been playing in this space a while. Share Willow has the same type of model for residential builders. So there's a few players that are doing this. I think it's too early to tell whether it's something that can grip and scale.
I have entire pushback on the incentive base. Like these employees are making already like pretty high hourly rates. Like a steel worker in New York City makes what, $160 an hour, if not more. Like, is really a $10 Chipotle gift card at the end of the week going to help that person like work a little bit harder? I'm just curious, like what is the best case for that? Like if you're like, hey, we're gonna do $1,000 bonuses at the end of the week. If you're gonna like the owner's paying for that, like the owner's paying for an outcome, and now you're trying to like double pay the person that's supposed to be doing work that's already complete.
Not always linear though, Mike, right? Like if you're in a compressed schedule situation, you need to do acceleration, there's no float in your schedule, and you're like there's LDs at play, you can share the mitigated downside. So it's not going to be a Chipotle gift card. It doesn't always have to be. I'm obviously talking theoretically because I don't do this. But there are some situations where it sounds like, Anna will correct us if we're wrong here, but it sounds like there could be more at stake than just, like a notional amount of money to accelerate or move faster or higher quality.
Incentive
Isn't that the job?
Didn't you cut your teeth as a salesperson? Like,
so again, yeah, I'm just the entire fascination around this that I have is like I've been trying to figure out how to incentivize makers to like I would love to in software world. There's go to market and makers. Go to market, yeah. There's sharks that are going after selling an output and they want to get incentivized on that. I have not been able to figure out how to incentivize an engineer, a product manager, or a designer. Because they're bought into doing the work that they're doing the work, like saying like, hey, I'm gonna give you a $10,000 bonus and we hit this milestone internally. It comes with friction outside of a sales role, where a sales role it makes sense. And I'm just curious as a steel worker in New York City that's making $250,000 a year, that's getting overtime pay already for doing extra. Like the steel worker that I worked with out in the Eagle Stadium back in 2012, his wife was an orthopedic surgeon. He's like, I make twice what my wife makes in Philadelphia because he worked 100 hours a week. And I'm just curious, like, it feels like it's almost like disrespectful to the individual on the job site saying, hey, can you work a little bit harder? And like when you're compressing schedule, like what does that even mean, compressing schedule? Like, hey, it's not like you're sitting on an assembly line installing like bolts or widgets. Like they're like swinging steel. They're like hanging ductwork. I don't know. It's just like, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around it. And I'm just curious, like how you guys would think about it.
I think something else is broken if incentive pay is needed, right? Like there's some like part of the model that is not fine-tuned if like you feel the need to just like pour more money on top. I'm with you, Mike. Like it's never something I've been excited to like build on.
And selfishly, it seems like it's someone from, again, like not saying it, and like people like come out from the offside of space and like, hey, we're going to make construction 20% more efficient by using software. And they're like, all right, like let's unpack this. All right, you're installing ductwork on the 13th floor. How are you going to make installing ductwork on the 13th floor of this skyscraper 20% more efficient? You have one hoist lift. You might have a tower crane that's available in a specific time frame. Like it just seems like this overarching, hey, we're going to make construction more efficient. Here's A16Z saying construction is backwards, when I will still stand on this. I think construction is the third most complicated thing that the entire world does, next to rocket ships and GPU/silicon wafers. Construction is right there below that and is super, super tech forward. And I will stand on that ground for the life of me.
Push back on that, but I don't know if that's what Anna wants to talk about.
Yeah, wait a second.
We'll save it as in the grab bag for future.
Wait, how are you gonna push back? Are you gonna push it down the list, or are you gonna push it up the list?
I'll DM Mike furiously explaining my point of view.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I think the last time you brought this up, it was number 2, but you've been inspired by the art.
No. It was all the lithography, like the ASML. yes, is way more complicated. You're literally shooting atoms with space travel. The Earth is moving, the universe is moving, all in different directions. That's complicated. But I will say, creating a controlled environment for a hospital or any type of lab facility is one of the most complicated things in the world because you cannot control any of the environments around it.
Yeah, actually, this is funny. This leads to something. So if you look at the cost of a chip, this was where I cut my teeth in my career. So this information is 10 years out of date, and the trend has probably only continued. The majority of the cost of the chip is actually in testing it. Like, it's not in manufacturing it. It's you got this thing off the wafer, like you need to be able to test it to verify that it meets like what goes on and all the equipment and processing and so forth that goes on there. And AMD won the gigahertz war because they designed around that testing, which you could argue is a little bit like a software fix. They made this like logical representation thing that made it easier to test, which allowed them to move like substantially faster and beat Intel to offering commercial gigahertz thing. And so I don't know, it sounds like software could make a dent. I don't know if it'll make a dent.
My other pushback to tie this back to Anna and trade is everyone's like, oh, construction hasn't got more efficient. If you look at the cost per square foot of Vanderbilt 1, the new tower in New York City, or JP Morgan's new tower, the cost per square foot is higher because people are willing to pay a premium for a new building when everyone's like, oh, the Empire State Building was built in 18 months and now, Vanderbilt 1 took 5 years. The cost that you can charge for Vanderbilt 1 is a lot higher than the Empire State Building today. And Empire State Building is not a class. Sure, they can label it as a Class A building. To spin it back to Anna's pitch, or Anna's company, Anna has a gorgeous office in Soho. She's not in this building that has no windows. She is in a beautiful building with a beautiful like glass ceiling for that reason. So like there's this tie to like complexity and like beauty that's hard to measure. That when everyone's like, oh, construction is not getting more efficient, it's getting more complicated. Like having a VRF system, which is pumping refrigerant up hundreds of stories through a building so that Andrew's office can be at 72 degrees and Anna's office can be at 68 degrees is super, super complicated. Yeah. And there's no like magic wand of software that's going to fix that. All right, I'm off my boat. I'm off my pedestal.
Can I ask a question to Anna? So Anna, I have two questions. One, can you paint a picture for us of what trade will look like in the future? Obviously, you're already unified. You're stitching together various disparate tools. Customers are already experiencing value there. But where does it go? And like, what is the feeling your customers will have when you achieve this final vision? And then I'll circle back to my next point after you answer.
I'm going to keep this intentionally high level because there's a few, there's people in this space and it's heating up, and I think our vision is really, really unique. But where I've always seen trade is unlocking financial opportunity for everyone that it touches, right? And so that is business owners, payroll admins, all the way to the workers in the field, right? And I think you can interpret that in a couple of different ways.
And on making money or generating revenue, you could do that so many ways. Are you seeing, like going back to Mike's point around productivity and cost per square foot, you obviously have this data, you have the productivity information. What are you seeing about the industry that nobody else can see? Like, what do the trends look like? Are people getting more productive? Like, can you give us some quick extrapolation of that?
The number one thing I'm seeing right now is companies are actually shrinking in size, doubling down on like their core workforce. This is the trades, right? Like if they were bloated in any way, they are no longer. They are running as lean as possible, but actually getting way more aggressive with the projects that they're taking on, right? And so if they were previously operating with 120 guys in the field, they're now sitting at 70. They've shrunk, they've removed any bloat. It's like they're hunkering down, right? And riding any waves, because I think there's been a high degree of kind of like unpredictability. I think it was a really, really slow end of last year, start to this year. And so that's the macro, right? Headcount is down, but project volume is increasing.
And do you think that's because the market is saying, we have so many projects, we're desperate for trades, and so now there are more entrants with smaller headcounts, and it's actually an aggregate kind of lower, like in aggregate there's more trades, but they're skewing the numbers down because there's so much demand, or medium-sized companies are actually getting smaller, they're actively cutting employees because they just don't need them anymore. Because that's kind of counter narrative, right? Like the whole narrative is there's not enough people. So it does kind of like, I'd love for you to help me understand like what's actually happening.
It's an interesting way to think about it, and you can kind of make the argument both ways. I think there is a labor shortage, right? You hear this all the time. For every 7 people that retire, 1 new person exits a trade school. Like, those stats are real and poignant. I think you're seeing a lot more like man in a van personas stand up and like go tackle data center work, right? They'll break away from a larger company and build a small crew and like go try to like take on a big in a new market. We're seeing a lot of movement to kind of like random cities and towns. People are going anywhere to get the project, but in general, the volume is low, right? I think I'd have to spend more time thinking about the different factors that compound. And in such a big industry, there's a lot of different dynamics at play. I don't think we can point our finger at one and say this is what's happening.
Yeah.
What are the typical trades that I mean, you mentioned multi-trade, and so that probably answers the question if I knew enough. Like, what are typical trades that you're covering?
Yeah,
Like
we
MEP
deal with
stuff, or like, especially,
heavy civil, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, carpentry, painting, right? There's no trend or pattern match available. We are trade agnostic.
Okay. How does the like man in the van? I guess there's probably a lot of data center work that's not $10 billion ground up campus by a hyperscaler, but like those tend to be they're big projects, right? Like what scope ends up fitting a man in the van on a big project like that? Like, I mean, are the GCs like starting to slice things up and have multiple trades covering the same scope but in different areas or something? Just like it's very counter narrative. I'm just like interested.
Yeah, so my definition of man in a van is like 25 and under, right? It's not just one guy going out with a truck, right? So it's like, they have a smaller fleet. I think that speaks to it. It's more the latter, right? Like there's so much work to be done. Things have to happen so quickly. The timelines for getting these data centers up and running are the most aggressive. And so really it's like, if you're skilled, you have the certs, you have the permits, you have all the authorization to do the work, no one's going to say no if no one else is around to do it. A lot of times these larger GCs are subbing out to the smaller shops to just get the work done in time.
So they might be. I'm GE done, or no, GE done doesn't do a ton of. Anyway, I'm DPR. I'm doing data center work. Like, it's in a remote location. Boy, I got a fuckload of conduit to hang. Like, who can hang conduit? Like, great. You take this part. We'll pay you. You take this part. We need to be able to mobilize labor. Okay.
Have you had any general contractors try to push this out on their subcontract network? Have you had like any success going down that motion? Because it seems like, hey, if we actually can make at the end of the day, like the labor is the most important part of a construction job site. So like, has that motion worked at all? Where in that example, like JE Dunn's like, hey, we're using trade, so you guys can get paid yesterday as opposed to 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, look at who my second largest investor is, right? It's Suffolk Construction. I think that they see the value in, like, if the trade back office is cleaned up and streamlined, like, the general contractor benefits. But I think more now than ever, compliance is at an all-time high, and the GC is liable if a subcontractor doesn't pay their workers, doesn't pay benefits. And so there's a really unique play here that, like, trade can be that conduit and that cleanup.
I have a question. When you think about the most inspiring success stories contrasted with, the previous state, what comes to mind? The one that is like, yes, this was like really worth it. I know you gave us the story about being able to buy a cake for someone's daughter. It's a beautiful story. Like, if you could give us an anecdote of it's a good one. If you give us like an anecdote of impact where your customers are like, this is crazy ROI, 100% worth it. Like, where does your mind go?
It just only happened a couple weeks ago, but like this one woman payroll admin, she's been there forever, right? And because payroll cycles are every 7 days, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're spent processing payroll. Thursday, Friday, you're running reports and doing invoicing. By the time you blink, you're running payroll again. And historically, all of the payroll systems have been on-prem, right? And so you have to be on site to run payroll. And so this one payroll admin's has been chained to her desk, right? Like, unable to take a vacation. She's been unable to step away from the office because no one else knew how to run payroll. She's been running it by hand, like, for her entire career, right? doing all of the manual calculations, everyone's rate overrides. That's in her head, right? There was never any systematized record of this organization's payroll. So, trade unlocked the ability for her to like take a vacation, right? It sounds so simple, but it's like that type of like from the desk being able to like, I think she was even able to help triage when she was on vacation, but it's all on the cloud now, right? So she could log in from where she was and support the team, right? But like trade is all about taking processes that have lived in Aunt May's head, right? The payroll admin who's somehow a relative of the contractor, who's, has never really adopted technology in any meaningful way. It all of a sudden builds a system where anybody can jump in and pick it up, right? And that's been a massive like unlock for companies. I mean, we've also seen just in general, like, companies have spent upwards of $300,000 a year, if not more, on different software, right, that we're collapsing together. So when you talk to an owner, it's just like an immediate ROI is the time and the money back.
That's really compelling. My dad runs a general contracting business. He was a painter before.
Nice.
And he would have like, I think at its height, it was like 8 employees. Like a hallmark part of my childhood were these people coming to our house to pick up their paycheck. Hey, is Enzo here? I need my paycheck. And you just give out paychecks. So you're robbing future children of that experience. So that's a downside.
That'll stay with me for sure.
Yeah, I'm only kidding. Obviously, it's great. My dad would definitely benefit from this, but he's somewhat retired now. He's tired of painting. Mike, Andrew, anything burning that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, outside of payroll and trade, what are you most excited about in the construction space? What are you seeing that's like, getting you pumped? This is the longest that we've not talked about AI, so would love your unfiltered, unbiased opinion on that as well. And just as we kind of wrap this up.
I think this is something that Mike, you and I talked about at dinner a couple weeks ago, where it's like, I am so focused on what I do. Like, I'm very hyper fixated in this space. I'm not really like in the weeds on everyone else building the way that you are, which is something I actually really respect. You have a definite pulse. What I would say I'm really enjoying watching is all of the movement in this space. I think there's a lot of acquisitions. There's a lot of like strategic movement moving in this space. And I think just as founders building in an industry that was previously completely overlooked, it's a nice sign, right? That there is meaning and value in what we're building and it's being recognized more broadly. So I'd say that's probably what's exciting to me. Most of those companies have been AI focused, so we can kind of talk about that and where all of that's going. But my stance forever with construction and AI, unless we structure the data, there's not much AI is going to do for this industry. So there's a lot of work up front that needs to happen in order for us to be able to leverage it.
Controversial point on structuring. Mike is infuriated.
We're always at odds, me and Mike.
Can you tell us, this is definitely like an odd question, but is there a product in construction that you really admire and why? And obviously, no one's expecting you to say anyone on this call, not that you would know, but John?
Well,
could be John.
You could.
When you think about products that really inspire you and you're emulating within trade, where does your mind go?
It's a good question. I think that I tend to lean towards the founder building it, right? And so like when you're asking me this question, I have different founders popping into my head. But I think tools that provide immediate and functional value are like what come to mind immediately. So like one is like Area, which is like a pre-qualification tool for GCs, which has a really simple like subcontractor onboarding flow. It's highly visible for the GC. It keeps compliance and safety front and center. That was the first company that popped to mind, honestly. But there are so many, and I feel like I'm in an industry of like founder giants. I have not met a single construction tech founder that I haven't been truly, truly impressed by. And I cannot say that about other verticals. I think you have to be made of tough stuff to build in this space. And oftentimes that breeds greatness. So no bad words, honestly.
Come on. Where's the spicy take? Just kidding.
No, Mike, I leave those to you on LinkedIn.
Please, I haven't had a spicy take this week. I need something. I need
I'm
something
waiting.
juicy to go after.
I've been sitting around waiting. It's crazy.
I have a good one. I have a good one, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
What are you waiting for?
There's a big conference next week, so I'm gonna I'm thinking of being more aggressive during the conference. I think it's next week. When is Build World / whatever's in Chicago. Did I already miss this? Maybe I already missed it.
No, there's a bunch coming up. ER is happening in May. Pre-construction is happening in Phoenix. I'm going to that. Andrew's speaking at that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's going to be a good session, actually. We happen to have like one of the owners and one of the contractors we work with in town, and it's going to be a good panel.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, Build Worlds is next week in Chicago.
Well, Andrew and Mike, anything else? Any other questions you wanted to ask Anna?
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, Anna,
Thanks
this
for
has been
having me,
fantastic.
guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us into the story and telling us about trade. Wish you all the best, obviously, and congrats again on Series A and all the success.
I appreciate it, guys. Don't be strangers. Keep cracking away at the pod, and I'll see you guys soon.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to stop here.
Bye, guys.